In 2018, the women's evolution was thriving with the creations of the first women's Royal Rumble match, Elimination Chamber match, and even their own pay-per-view. But the one thing fans and even the wrestlers wanted were women's tag team titles. The sin isn't going to the existence of the titles, but rather the fact that WWE created the titles without thinking about properly booking a tag team division first. The 2019 Elimination Chamber event had the women compete inside the chamber structure to determine the inaugural champions, and out of the 6 teams that competed, only one of them were randomly thrown together, that being Carmella and Naomi. Rocky start, but a hopeful bright future was ahead with this match, so I'll take that sin away. Over the years, WWE managed to at least have the first few champions be a legitimately established tag team, with examples like Sasha Banks and Bayley, the Iconics, Kabuki Warriors, Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, and later down the line, Sasha and Naomi, and Damage Control. However, the biggest problem was the lack of legitimate competition due to lack of teams in the division. WWE made the women's tag team titles as a tri-branded title that could appear on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. However, any champions rarely showed up on NXT at all, to the point where the brand had to create their own women's tag team titles out of frustration. And in their short stint, the NXT women's tag team titles have actually attempted to make a worthwhile division. Over the years, it went from having 5 to 6 women's tag teams on both Raw and SmackDown to having only 2 on both sides to having literally 0 existing teams outside of the champions themselves. A problem that hasn't been addressed even after Vince McMahon no longer controlled the booking. That alone deserves 100 sins, because this is not how you properly book a tag team division. And on that note, even when there are new tag teams being added to the division, 9 times out of 10, it's 2 names randomly pulled out of a hat, they team up, tag a couple matches, lose to the champions, and then split up like they never even existed. Or, the random teams put together, team up, tag a couple matches, win the titles, and then the former champions split up like they never even existed. It's almost tough to remember the last time a team actually stayed together for longer than 3 months when they were not tag team champions, or even after they lose to the tag team champions. According to WWE's booking, losing in a women's tag team title match practically spells eventual death to the existence of the team that lost. Sasha Banks walked out of WWE not once but twice due to the lack of legitimate booking on the women's tag team titles. The second time, being the end of her WWE career, was sometimes looked upon as a sacrifice for a better future. Judging by the booking of the women's tag team titles after that, well, that didn't work. Due to the lack of competition, a majority of the time the women's tag team champions are either not defending their titles for a minimum of 2 months or trying to fight for singles titles, or worse, being the butt end of beatdowns by the dominant singles champions. And if that wasn't bad enough, there were literally 2 pay-per-views in a row in 2021 where Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair, 2 women set to main event WrestleMania 37, were placed in as challengers against Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler for the women's tag team titles. The Riot Squad literally existed around the time too. This not only proved that there were no real challengers for the tag team champions, but it also caused Sasha and Bianca to have one of the worst WrestleMania main event buildups of all time due to them teaming with each other more times than they feuded with each other. One of the best tag team title runs for the women was the second reign of Sasha Banks and Bayley in 2020. But even that had the tag team titles be put in the backseat, while Bayley was the SmackDown Women's Champion and Sasha Banks went after the Raw Women's title. Conveniently enough, going after singles titles was added into Sasha's reasoning for walking out in 2022, despite previously doing that in 2020. Months after Sasha Banks and Naomi walked out of WWE, a tournament was made to crown new women's tag team champions. And I kid you not, outside of the visiting Toxic Attraction and Damage Control themselves, every team in that tournament either broke up immediately after losing, or had the occasional match just to confirm they were still together before ultimately splitting up. Hell, Raquel Rodriguez and Aaliyah won that tournament and became the new champions, only to lose those titles a week or so later to the very team they beat, and then they were never heard from as a team again. You know something that was very sad? WrestleMania 38 involved a fatal 4-way for the women's tag team titles, and literally 2 of those teams were put together just so WWE could showcase more talent on the card. Natalya and Shayna Baszler randomly joined in just because, lost the match, and were never heard from again. Meanwhile, Rhea Ripley destroyed Liv Morgan after they lost the match. Matter of fact, literally none of those teams in the match exist today. Bottom line is this, people wanted women's tag team titles, but what WWE failed to do is properly book a women's tag team division before they introduced the titles. As a result, the women's tag team championship is one of the biggest jokes of all time. A women's tag team division is a great idea as long as you get enough women on your rosters to actually compete full time in the tag team division week in and week out like the men's tag team division. And if you're not going to do that, get rid of the titles until you do.